making the iconic Wolverine cowl.
Stop it.
I was just gonna tell him how I 3D printed your...
Drop it.
Okay, I just wanted to tell everybody...
Quit now.
Yeah, but I've got a whole video to do. I even went out and got a matching...
Shut the about this.
Whoa, that's a little much there, don't you think?
One more word. Please give me one.
You're not an animal. It means the Wolverine. We're brothers, Jim.
You save the good stuff for special occasions?
Alright, what's up everyone? Back at it again. It is DW Darkwing Dead. I want to thank you for stopping by the channel today and checking out today's video, whether it's your first time or you're a frequent subscriber and viewer of the channel. Thank you so much for popping in today. If you are a newcomer to the channel, please, before you leave today, make sure you click that subscribe button because I got a lot more awesome videos on deck for the rest of the year. But today's video, yes, we are talking about this guy right here. This is a very similar video to my last build with the Deadpool helmet that we did. As we're letting the printer do a lot of the work and we are adding a little bit of weathering and grunging and some cool effects to make an awesome raw printed helmet. So definitely hats off to both Do 3D and Sunlu in this one for helping me bring Wolverine to life. I've also got some additional comments and feedback at the end of the video, so make sure you tune in and check those out as they will help you and guide you to getting your helmet to look just like this. Without any further ado, let's get into building Wolverine. Let's go. All right, so getting things going here. Once again, we are in Orca Slicer, and here we have the main helmet piece of the Wolverine cowl. Now, I'm not going to go crazy and talk about settings like I did in my last video. If you watch my Deadpool video, I'm going to spare you the 10 to 12 minutes of me gabbing about what my settings are and what to use and what not to use. What I am going to do is, if you look in the description box in this video, what you want to do is you want to click on that link. It'll take you to a Google Drive and you can save those. I have three of my favorite printing profiles, basically a good, better, best scenario that you can use. You can use these for the K1 Max for basically any clipper-based machine that you're using Orca Slicer in. Top left here, you want to hit File, and then you want to hit import and then go import configs, and it will import whichever profile that you may download. You can use any of those settings that I use to get the great quality that you're about to see here. But the helmet itself, what I am going to talk about is basically the way that you should position this. So there are two models of this helmet. One has the nose built in, like you see here. The other does not have the nose built in. Now, I tried printing the helmet without the nose built in, and it failed miserably. So there were not enough supports, and I got a spaghetti factory. So here, the best way that I've found to print this with the nose attached is to take your rotation tool and try to get the nose basically touching the build plate. And you want to make sure that both the nose and the corners of the earpieces here are touching. Now, very important, we're going to go into support. So obviously, we could do something under supports here, and I'm going to be using tree supports where we could use a very high overhang. And of course, it would support, you know, basically all of this here, all the back, everything we need. Unfortunately, it is also going to create a massive amount of supports on the inside of the dome, which we don't need. So what I recommend doing is top right here, we have something called support painting that's in Orca Slicer. So go ahead and click that. What this tab allows you to do is paint on the model where you want the supports to be generated. So I talked about that 60 degree, okay? And look at that. It's going to support where we need to. The back brim, you know, under the eyes, you know, these overhangs the nose, but this is completely unnecessary. That's going to waste a ton of time and a ton of material. So what we want to do is kind of bump that down. So we bump that down somewhere around, I found between 10 and 12 works fine. So do that on there, and also do that on your support settings here. So that way it just gives us a small little support area in the middle of the dome, which I find is pretty important. But now what we're going to do is paint the supports on where we need. So we definitely need it on the nose, all these arches and overhangs, and all you want to do is usually your pen size somewhere between 2 or 210 is usually pretty good. And you're going to click and drag your mouse over all of these overhangs where we want supports to be. Kind of want to take your time when you're doing this, kind of go over everything. Now, areas here where it's more vertical, we don't really need it quite as much, but I still like to do just a little bit on that arch right there. Now, very important, this is a very sharp edge. I do like to generate a little bit of support right here, and then obviously all along the back here, because this is going to be floating in midair, so we want to support all that. Now I'm just going to do half of the helmet here just for time purposes. Obviously you'll mimic the left to the right, or maybe I'm doing the right to the left. I don't know what side I'm doing. It's backwards. Okay, but you basically get the idea here. So after you have all that set up, you have all of your settings typed in for your speed, infill, your layer height, all that stuff. We're going to go ahead and hit slice. So you can see that it is going to generate all the supports, every place that we dragged on with that support painting, and it made all the essential supports that we needed. And as far as printing goes, it printed it just fine. I did not use adaptive layers because I didn't think it was going to be fully needed for the texturizing. I actually went down to a 0.12. Again, that profile will be in the description, but I did have to scale this a little bit larger to fit my head, 106%, and it printed at 1 day, 5 hours. You probably could cut that down a little bit if you mess with the supports a little bit more. There's definitely ways to cut it down, and you can always go through and see here in your print preview as far as what took up the most time and things like that. But I wanted to play it safe after this print failing once. I wanted to make sure I had all of those supports painted on there the right way. It printed great, and really at that 0.12 layer height, it still came out really good, as you can see here. Now moving on, there was some modification that I had to do. This is a Do 3D file, and it was only, I wanted to print the wings individually, because when you print them like this is how the file comes, is one big piece. You have a lot of traveling, and anytime you have a lot of traveling back and forth with the nozzle, there is the possibility that you could get stringing, additional oozing, debris, and we're not doing any sanding or anything like that, so we want the print as clean as possible. So I really thought the best way to do this was just have each wing printed individually, just the nozzle going left to right, top to bottom, versus, printing, stopping, lifting, coming over here. Again, unnecessary travel. It takes longer. Wanted to try to eliminate that, get a nice clean print. But the only two options that they had was the complete one here, and then the wings, when they're separated, they had this whole chin piece. Well, you try to print that, and that's just a ton of, again, wasted time. There's going to be a bunch of supports. You put yourself at risk for supports blowing out, failing. So what I did is I opened this in 3D Builder. This is the editing tool that I'm in right now. And I basically simply just cropped these right down the middle here. Okay, so I took the edit tool, and I use the split feature, and you can split this right down the middle. So you would basically just rotate this to wherever you want it done, and then boom, you hit split, and I have it saved right over here. So this is the piece that I modified right here, and that was basically just by taking this piece and cropping it in the middle, and then I just saved this as its own file. That worked out really good. Now, the other issue was I wanted this style, where I didn't want the chin piece connected. I want them separate, but again, the only piece that Do 3D had was this one solid chin piece. So kind of didn't like that. So again, what I did is I took these two and I cropped them. Took the crop tool, went into edit, just selected this, and then basically just moved this to where I thought was most accurate, hit split, and it split the piece, and then I just saved those as individual files, and on the printer they went. I did have a couple additional pieces that I had to print that I didn't need to modify. The inner eye pieces, the white mesh inserts as well. This just giving you an idea. I used tree supports on these. I did them at a little bit of an angle, and these settings here worked out really well. So once everything was printed, it was basically time to get everything cleaned up, get the supports off, and start getting Wolverine put together. So on to assembling the Wolverine cowl. This is another piece from Do 3D that is magnetized. So I went ahead and put all the magnets, glued them in place, and popped the wing on. But I really wasn't too happy with how sturdy the wing was. You kind of shook it and moved it around and it fell off. So I kind of resorted back to my old school method, and I just plastic welded it in place. All the pieces where the plastic seams met, I went ahead and grabbed my soldering iron and just plastic welded it in place. You can also use a 3D printing pen. This is another great great option. You can also reinforce them with glue beforehand. Again, another nice touch just to make sure everything is nice and sturdy and in place. This method here just makes more of a permanent bond between all the plastics. After using a 3D printing pen, I do like to clean up the weld just a little bit with a soldering iron. You can kind of see here side by side. The 3D printing pen works well, but it's a little bit sloppy. I just find using the soldering iron is just a little bit more controlled, and I like a little bit more. But regardless whether you're using the pen or the soldering iron, this just reinforced everything and guaranteed a nice firm bond that the helmet wasn't going to fall apart, regardless if we're wearing it or if it's just on display. So once I double checked everything, made sure everything was welded in place and nice and secure, it was moving on to weathering. So just like the Deadpool mask, I went ahead and started doing some dry brushing to it. Again, this was just to replicate grunge and dirt and buildup would occur on the mask. This one had a little bit more finer details, so I had to take my time a little bit more. Overall, again, just trying to make it look more realistic and give it a little bit of a weathering effect. After that, I took a little bit of gray and silver paint and mixed them together, just kind of giving it that contrast and making it replicate a little bit of wear and tear and maybe some scratching on the black part of the wings, and that little bit of weathering really make it look more realistic. Once that was all set, the mask was looking pretty good, and I was getting pretty excited, maybe a little bit too excited, because I went and knocked my phone over and almost broke it, but luckily I didn't because the show had to go on. So at this point, the mask is looking pretty good, but I wanted to add just a little bit extra to it. So again, I did the same effect that I did with my Deadpool mask and grabbed some satin black and just kind of did some fan spraying on the helmet, again, to just replicate some dirt and some buildup. Looked really good. The last piece that I wanted to do was I actually took some 80 grit sandpaper and just kind of dragged it over the edges, again, to replicate realistic scratches. We added that silver and gray color to replicate some wear and tear, but this actually looks like scratches and more battle damage. It's a really cool effect, something that you can add to really any raw print, and it just takes that piece to the next level, makes it look more realistic, gives the helmet its own unique touch, and really adds a ton of character. So having one final look at the Wolverine cowl here, you can see all the weathering, all the dry brushing, the scratches, that realistic look that we gave it. From a few steps back here, you would never know that this was simply just a raw printed helmet. So now that we have this cowl looking more realistic, let me give you my final thoughts on this build and wrap this video up. All right, everyone. Well, there you have it. There is a look at my spin on making the Wolverine cowl. Definitely a pretty cool build, and a lot of it is attested to the quality in the file from Do 3D. Having the amount of detail and precision in these individual pieces that allowed me, you know, just to raw print it at a very nice layer height. Obviously, when you're doing a raw print like this, you know, things like setting, positioning, they're so very important and very critical to the end result. And obviously assembling it there, a little bit of change on the fly. The magnets really just weren't holding the way I like to. Very easy to plastic weld it together, slide it right on. I was a little bit more at ease with everything being nice and firm and sturdy, welded in place there. Of course, with the weathering and the battle damage that I did, I think really took the helmet to the next level. It looks absolutely awesome on display right next to Deadpool. If you're looking to get either this file or the filament, like I said, I will leave the links in the description. Also, I touch a little bit on my settings, but in the description box, you will see a link to my Google Drive, a good, better, best settings if you are using a clipper-based printer and orca slicer. Big thing with these that I touched on my last video is the variable layer height. That is something that is really going to take your print to the next level. You have to add that in after you kind of drop the STL in there. So 3 profiles that I have in there, they do not have the variable layer height in there. You can add that on if you want, which I do recommend. But I did go through and tweak some settings. A couple things that I didn't mention in my last video, but some very essential settings that are tweaked and adjusted that will give you a good, better, best scenario. Add that variable layer height. It's really gonna skyrocket the quality of your prints. I want to thank you guys for tuning in and watching today's video. If you did like it, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Questions, comments, concerns, feedback, or you just want to say what's up, please go ahead and drop me a comment. Obviously, with any questions, I will try to answer them back as soon as I can. And if you're just saying what's up, you know I'll hit you back. Lastly, if you do enjoy all things 3D printing, cosplay, DIY builds, tutorials, comparison videos, all the stuff I'm doing on the channel, be sure to go ahead and click the subscribe button. I have a lot more videos on deck for the rest of the year. Probably way too many I have time for, but I'm gonna keep plugging away and bringing you guys the videos you wanna see. Once again, a big thanks goes out to Do 3D and Sunlu. Make sure to check them out on their website, all their social media accounts, see all the cool things they got cooking up. And if you happen to swing by either one of them, make sure to tell them DW sent you. Well, that's a wrap on Wolverine, guys. I gotta get moving on to the next project. Make sure to give me a thumbs up, drop me a comment, and click the subscribe button. Until next time, DW out. Later.
I hope you had the time of your life.